friends of the podcast, newcomers, whoever you are. This is Presidential Speculatainment. I'm your host, Dan Winslow. And on this edition, we have a somewhat important historical event that we're going to be covering. That's right. It is the Quicken Loans Fox News debate. Ladies and gentlemen, the biggest names in politics have gathered for your entertainment pleasure. This date marks a clash in the timeline where popular culture can no longer ignore politics. As a matter of fact, I was just going about my Thursday evening. I was having a chat with a fella and quite enjoying it, as a matter of fact. And you know what? He rushed off. He had to get going because he had to go catch the debate. At that point, I just took a moment and just kind of thought, wow, this is really happening. I mean, the preseason, if it's not over now, it's nearly over. You know, all those sit-ups, Ted Cruz, that you tried to do, you know, I hope you did them all because it's game time. You know what they say? Washington, D.C. is Hollywood for ugly people. But Ohio, on the eve of the first debate, featured a couple handsome lads and some good old-fashioned entertainment. So all in all, we're not all that far off the mark of Hollywood. And who are we talking about? We are talking about what Fox deems via 5 apparently recent polls to be the top 10 Republican candidates for president. That would be Donald Trump, Jeb Bush, Scott Walker, Ted Cruz, Chris Christie, Mike Huckabee, Ben Carson, Marco Rubio, Rand Paul, and John Kasich. They all shared a stage. So I'm sure you guys want to know, the quick and dirty. And in fact, what I'm thinking is that that's going to be what this episode is all about. The quick and dirty, right? What's the headline? What's the subheadline? Who won? Who lost? Who got bruised? Who got lipstick on them? There was really so much golden moments. I personally thought, then again, I am a political junkie, only at nighttime, during this debate. But, I would be a fool to try and fit it all in one episode. So I think what I'll do is just give you guys the skinny on this one. And then if you stay tuned, I will hit you back with some of the more, I guess you could say, sophisticated exchanges and multi-leveled relationships between some of our rivals who experienced a little bit of friction in their relationships on stage in front of all to see. But yeah, there was bickering, there were arguments, there was name calling, there was this, there was that, but what happened? Who won? Who lost? The winner was very clear, very, very clear to me. It was Quicken Loans, the official sponsor of the debate. Quicken Loans. Apparently one of the top 5 refinancing mortgage companies in the country. Yes, Quicken Loans. They made out like bandits. Did not have their name tarnished in the least. And I don't know. I think they did pretty well. Considering that Quicken Loans was our big winner, I would say the biggest loser of the night was Fox News. Goodness. Made a fool of themselves on the eve of August 6th, 2015. And this is a relative scale, so I would say compared to all the humans, trying to conquer the number one fear in America, which is not death. That's number two. I'm talking about public speaking. Compared to all of them, Fox News, in simply the act of moderating this public speaking kind of a thing, made the biggest fool of all. Yeah, there were 3 co-hosts. We have Megyn Kelly, Barbie in Chief, and Bret Baier, Kendall in Chief, and Chris Wallace, who it sounds like he needs surgery on his larynx. But I'm not a medical professional, but I'm just a little worried about the guy. Those 3 individuals, I would say, were the biggest clowns of all. There was a clash of tones. We had 10 people. And actually, for the record here, we are getting into the quick and dirty. I did think all 10 of them did all right. Okay? So we had 10 professional this or that's, and they all, I felt like, held their own with at least a C or a B. And then we just had this weird performance by Fox News. It was like they took a math test and just drew like some abstract self-portrait on it, covering the entire page, and then just slid it across the teacher's desk. Like, all right, see you on Monday. And then just like strolled out. We'll see you for the next debate in December. I can't help but be objective. All right, it comes with the territory. So, I'm not blaming your network. I'm simply blaming the individuals you designated executive privilege to, who decided that Megyn Kelly, Bret Baier, and Chris Wallace, whomever decided to let those 3 class clowns moderate a serious Republican presidential debate. Mr. Murdoch, I would heavily look into whatever corner office. Yeah, I would pay a visit right away and just find out what he or she was thinking. I'm talking about the subtle, professional tricks of the trade that were ignored, or flipped on their head. Like when basically all the candidates are initially shooed out of the wings onto the stage, and they line up in order of their polling place. So Donald Trump is in the very middle because he polled number 1, and the rest of the candidates kind of fan out on either side. And for some reason, out of all the quasi-normal Fox correspondents, this one feller known as Chris Wallace was drafted to be a part of this event. And so Chris Wallace says, with his Chris Wallace voice, as all the candidates take their positions standing in a line on the stage. And now, all the cameramen are taking their pictures. This is the picture you'll see tomorrow. All the candidates standing on stage together. We'll see who's talking to each other? Who's not talking to each other? And then, of course, Megyn Kelly chimes in. Chief Barbie. She says, "Oh, well, that's awkward." And then Chris Wallace says, "Oh, well, that was the whole point." Megyn Kelly seemingly is sensing that this production is falling apart, and she says, "Don't say it to the news. They're not feeling it. I don't know. You guys nervous?" And then Chris Wallace laughs. And then none of the candidates say anything. That's the thing, is like these pundits, they leave very long pauses in between all of their, I guess, commentary, right? Commentary on what? Why are they doing the job of a sports announcer when it's simply politicians lining up for a photograph? But yet they take these long pauses, and even after the photographers are done, so the candidates are just standing up there just wondering what to do. Very awkward. So this is going on. As the little banter is going on, and Chris Wallace is laughing. Megyn Kelly, she goes, "Oh, we're a little nervous too." Then Chris Wallace says, Right? Like he's trying to say, like the Brooklyn, maybe I have time, maybe I don't. Like he's trying to go like, But his version of that, because of his larynx and because of his vocal ridiculousness, he ends up going, Arr! Or I can't even repeat it. I think I did it right the first time. But the next line to come out of the Fox circus after that, it comes from Bret Baier. To match Megyn Kelly, the Barbie, we have Bret Baier, who's like the Barbie Ken doll, sort of like 90 days in to steroid use, is how I would describe him. And finally, we get the third wheel chiming in, making fun of Chris Wallace, right? Because these three dopes, are such amateurs, they're making fun of each other, right? So Chris Wallace goes, originally, Megyn Kelly goes, "Oh, we're a little nervous too." Chris Wallace goes, "Arr." And then Megyn Kelly says, "They'll be fine." And then Bret Baier goes, "That sounded like the buzzer." Talking about the noise that came out of the facial orifice of Chris Wallace, which, like I said, was supposed to be like a but instead he went "Arr!" And so it sounded crazy right off the bat before any action even started with the debate. And so, yeah, Bret says that sounded like the buzzer. And you'll notice that Chris Wallace literally shuts up for like the rest of the exchange because Megyn Kelly, comes in, picks up the slack. She says, "We saved them from that buzzer." Bret Baier, "That's right." Megyn Kelly, "We'll explain that." Bret Baier, "We'll talk about that in just a minute. There was controversy. It's good to see you, gentlemen. Welcome. And what do you think of this crowd?" Audience is cheering them on. Finally, the candidates are really getting restless. I've been dying to know just what they're doing, standing in a straight up line. That was awkward enough. Yeah, Kelly. Because you made it that way, Megyn Kelly. Then, as there's more moving about and discombobulation at the launch of the event. Finally, I'm nearly 10 minutes in to the television program, and Kelly explains, "We'll have a clean start to the show." Talking about how they're going to start in a minute or two, so that the actual debate will start at actually 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So, she's basically teasing everybody. It's not officially 9 p.m. Eastern Time yet. So then, these stooges on stage, wondering what to do for 1 3/4 minute, while some intense Fox graphics are displayed. Finally, the proper forum gets started, and it starts off with the joke of a asker of questions, Chris Wallace, and I'm not having a go at him. I'm just saying the tone of his voice makes him an absurd entity in physics, in that sort of a realm. He asks, "Because we know how much you like hand-raising questions." Then he asks them to raise their hand if basically they would consider a third-party run, or, not endorsing the eventual Republican nominee. So, not a big surprise. Only one hand was raised in the class. It was Mr. Donald Trump. It was the first mild attack on Trump's character of a decent few, coming from these three clownish moderators. So as far as the winners and losers of this debate in human terms, I have to say that there were not any clear casualties. Nobody went home in a body bag like Rick Perry did in the late summer / early autumn 2011, after he said that one fateful 4-letter word. No, I'm not talking about cunt. Right? So nothing like that happened, despite all the prompts from the hosts to try and create an awkward situation. Nothing awkward really happened. No big red faces at the end of the night. Nothing like that. In the same vein, no clear victors. No Muhammad Ali types who got to go home with the blood on the gloves, after a complete knockout. There's nothing like that. There were simply candidates that did better or worse than other candidates. Everybody really held their ground and kind of earned their keep. But nobody rose above everybody else to be the king. As Chris Wallace said, talking about the venue that the debate was held in Cleveland, Ohio, LeBron James is the king. But tonight, we're going to find out who the next king is. All right, thank you, Chris Wallace. Now, if you could just please stop talking and, I don't know, who do you got on speed dial? You got, let me see here, Neil Cavuto, or, I'll even take, who's that guy, Greg Gutfeld, right? Him, or let's get Greta. Greta, what's her face? How can you have a job as a professional speaker and have the voice, of a some kind of undertaker. It's horrible. There were two unimpressive candidates from my point of view. Donald Trump did not do very well from what I could see. He didn't do badly, but he did not impress. He certainly did not overly impress. I believe this is a combination of the format, which is not his ideal format, to do his thing, as well as, the questions he was asked, the immense pressure from the press, and he took a couple curveballs, not just from the moderators, but also some of the candidates on either side. There wasn't too much poaching of this supposedly reigning king of the jungle done by the other candidates. Actually, Rand Paul took two pretty aggressive shots at Donald Trump. It was mostly the questions that were lobbed at him in the form of grenades by the moderators. There was another disappointing performance. Not, nothing tragic, but Jeb Bush was less than impressive. Maybe I would give Trump a B- or a C+. I'd give Jeb a C or C-. I mean, he, his mediocrity, it was like in my face, barely passable. I was disgusted. And it wasn't just my usual disgust regarding Jeb Bush, and especially his eerie resemblance to George W. Bush, and the way that he kind of jerks his head around, and he's kind of smarter than George, so it's like he takes more time to formulate what he's gonna say, but it also looks like he also lies more, like he spends more time improvising various lies. Oh yeah, I took care of my disabled aunt growing up. It's like, oh, did you really? Well, I'm going to shake your hand and never see you again. So, I'm not really going to ever be able to prove that one way or the other. But nice to meet you, Jeb. Would you like me to vote for you? Like, oh, yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm going to pray to God, on this very night, that you will vote for me. Whenever the primaries, come up. And it's like, you know what, Jeb? You're full of shit. And some of that showed through Jeb's insincerity, I would say, right? That's why I give him a C, maybe even a C-. But, it wasn't even the substantive stuff. I mean, I know Jeb is bad on policy. It was like the performance overall. Just very, not only unconvincing, he was trying so hard that it was repulsive, right? It's like if you ever go out to an open mic and see who all the new comics are, who are just trying themselves out, and you might see some real talents out there and everything, and then you might see somebody, he walks up on stage and does 5 minutes, and this fella has been reading this little 5x4-inch notepad for about 50 hours over the last week. And he does an entire routine, completely memorized. All the motions are there for an entire 4 minutes and 47 seconds. And it is just incredibly brutal because he is trying so hard to achieve an effect on the audience. Trying so hard. He's just trying to just basically con laughter. He'll settle for sympathy laughs, just in the way that Jeb settled for, alright, we don't give a fuck applause. And it was just a smattering. And then he just forced his smile and just did a little George W. Bush-esque head swivel jerk motion with a little half grin. And it was just sickening the way it reminded me of, well, I guess my most recent memory is, I don't know, our entire country falling apart economically. George, yeah, where have you been? Oh, that's right, just painting and doing other art projects. Well, listen, tell your brother, Jeb, that maybe he should take up, something likewise. Maybe the kazoo. Alright, just not my president. Moving on, though. First of all, Ben Carson. Not only does he have a very magnetic, one-of-a-kind voice that I only just discovered in late July, at which point I updated Ben Carson to secure the number 2 spot on the list for sexiest candidates. Never mind all that, right? Take it from me, coming from a straight man. Don't just focus on neurosurgeon Ben Carson's sexiness. Yes, it's there, but he not only has that, he not only has the dexterity in his opposable thumbs and forefingers to operate surgically on a human brain, but he's a smart guy, apparently, and also quite witty. He has some good lines, which I did write down. So, not only did Ben Carson not answer the original questions that were posed, in this case being a silly question being asked or a frivolous one, right? A lot of issues facing our country, and Carson, he gets tossed one, way off the radar of what, 94% of Americans actually care about, right? He also managed to patronize the askers of such questions. So that was a treat. Senator Rand Paul, we're gonna put him in the second tier victors spot. I think maybe there's a couple. I think Ben Carson maybe was the best by a hair, right? Right behind him are a couple other guys. I'd say Rand Paul took a couple of aggressive actions during the debate. 2 of them were against Donald Trump. And, we always hope to see something unexpected. Just like when you're in that Vegas casino and you hope to, we're watching all these dudes just be well-mannered and obey all the rules, be polite to one another. Well, very early on in the debate, Rand, he spoke out of turn and just took a shot at Donald Trump. He was talking about Republicans, right? I guess Trump, as recently as 2004, has identified with the Democratic Party personally. And so, yeah, Rand just took a solid left hook at that fact right there. Got a good applause line. He got it in, before the moderators shut him down. You have to be loud enough and aggressive enough, when you're not being cued to speak to where they won't just talk over you. So just start running the show. I thought Rand got 1 point in that first exchange. And then, not very long after, Trump was very candidly discussing his support either 10, 20 years ago, since the 1990s. The fact that he has supported a single-payer universal healthcare system, despite the fact that he has sworn to repeal Obamacare, he was still sticking by that, saying, it works for Canada, works for Scotland. And again, we have a Rand attack came out of nowhere, not called upon. And hey, man, that's free airtime. You know what I mean? I don't know how many millions of viewers are watching, but, like if Rand was a can of Pepsi and he just ran out in the middle of the debate stage without being called on, Pepsis would get sold the next day. So I gotta respect it. I'm giving 2 points there to Randall. Marco Rubio. He was tossed, a couple, you could say they were grenades. I thought Rubio did quite a good job putting the old professional spin on the question, right? And slapping it back over like a hockey puck. Even though I know temperamentally Rubio is more of a, hot weather sports kind of a guy, spoke very eloquently and clearly during the debate, did not stumble over his words. He was not seen sweating profusely, and nobody reported a sighting of Rubio, sort of reaching in an emergency situation for an undersized bottle of water due to the immense pressure. Scott Walker, I'd say, maybe just slightly behind, Rubio, Rand, who were slightly behind Ben Carson, right? I'd say Walker maybe bringing up the third, just barely. It was very close. Walker didn't overly impress, and we're talking about the number 3 polled candidate here in the debate. The number 1 candidate, Donald Trump. The audience witnessed an unraveling of Trump. Slow unraveling throughout the debate. And Jeb, throughout the debate, it was more like a slow disintegration that the audience witnessed. Now, neither one of those were extreme. They were both very mild, but distressing on some kind of a level. And so here we have the number 3 candidate, Scott Walker. Well, hey, buddy, this is your big shot. You're going to rocket up to the top of the polls. Hopefully stay there for, 6 months before the Iowa caucuses. Good luck with that. Well, Walker didn't quite do that. But he held his own, I would say. I'd say he gave out slightly more than he received in terms of licks and punches. It's not like these candidates were going after each other. It was almost like moderator versus candidate. It's really weird, right? We're not supposed to be considering the moderators, these media people, right? When we go into the ballot little cubicle thing, Megyn Kelly is not even, right? She's totally erroneous. As is Bret Baier, right? All of them have nothing to do with all that. Yet somehow, they seem to have so much power over what kind of a shade of issue a candidate gets cast under. Right? And I feel like they lobbed Jeb just some softballs. And he still looked like a putz out there. Yet they're giving Walker all these, impossible questions about abortion and no exception for the mother and like out of context positions, all this stuff. And Walker's just trying to say, well, I own a Harley. He said at one point, he was aggressively normal and just trying to do his smirks and little grins. And that's why I'm giving him top tier status here, because he actually was able to dodge some of the nonsense that was thrown at him. One of the top speech makers out there. We had the middle of the road candidates. Poor Ted Cruz, he would have loved to be the ham of this night's event. But he was just asked all the wrong questions. And he wasn't able to do his usual, steal the spotlight clownishness. Kind of felt bad for him. Chris Christie, he really did well. Like, that's the thing. He did the best he could. And, again, you guys are getting this from a biased source. But even my objective measure, I believe Christie, he was just, he was falling short of the stats that had been racked up by the other guys he's sharing the stage with, It was almost like he was trying to compete, like, out of his weight class or something comparable to that. But he was just not stacking up. We had a Mike Huckabee, the former governor of Arkansas. He was not as bad as I thought. He really was not. As a matter of fact, he had a couple of the funniest lines of the night. And he was not, like, pathetic in any way. So, well done. Well done, Mike Huckabee. And then there was John Kasich. Now, he was a weird case. If anything, I would tell you that John Kasich was probably, honestly, the worst, but also weirdly the best at what he was trying to do. But what he was actually trying to do was, like, it was either outdated or, it'd be like if Hulk Hogan showed up to compete with a bunch of jockeys, right? And they're all climbing on their horses. And Hulk's horse is just going, what the? This fucking guy, I'm supposed to run with the... And he's amazing at what he's trying to do, which is basically be like some kind of a lame, moderate, unifying. But as far as this competition, I'm sorry, Kasich, you're just, I guess, not with it. I'm not going to say you're not hip. All right? Because none of these other guys are hip. But if they were hip, you wouldn't be hip. Let's just put it like that. As I said, nobody really got knocked out. And nobody really went on a rampage. So, no clear champion. And no clear sucker of the evening. In any case, Ben Carson, he gets asked about racial issues in the United States. I thought he gave a very good answer. Actually, he was talking about how he was a surgeon and how basically when he sawed off the top of someone's skull, right, and popped it off, and sort of was working with the brain right there. He's talking about how he can even sometimes pop out half the brain, which is required in some types of surgeries and everything. And, I thought it was a great answer because he was saying, well, the shade of the skin is frivolous because I'm trying to keep this organ alive, basically. The human brain, no matter who I'm working on. The race and the country of origin, it's like, it's so inconsequential to the surgery, right? So I was just thinking, though, while he was giving this answer, for some reason, the network, they did a cut over to one of their camera angles, and it was like on Ben Carson's right side, right? So it was showing him, it was like a medium shot, as they say in film school. Ben Carson right there giving his answer, talking about, unity and equality of the races. Right behind him, almost framed center in the shot for a solid few seconds, was Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. And he just slowly nodded while looking straight at Ben Carson, who was looking at Megyn Kelly, giving his answer. And Scott Walker just displayed the perfectly sympathetic and empathetic facial expression to look like a guy who you would see on the TV being like, oh man, this guy, he cares about all races. He really, might go out for a beer with Ben. Scott and Ben out for happy hour. And suddenly I just got this feeling of affection for Scott for no other reason than the fact that shot was displayed. So it's a narrative, As a matter of fact, folks, I have learned this trade in an academic setting as far as film production, right? So when you show an image like that, especially for a few seconds, you can't help but have an effect. And so I literally liked Scott Walker better after that. And I suspect other people did too. So, should we trust the network with so much narrative power? Well, you don't have a choice, right? I mean, sure, you can try and host your own debate in your garage. Good luck trying to get candidates there, right? I mean, maybe George Pataki will show up. But that is about it. Speaking of the second-tier candidates, I'm thinking about covering them. But, I haven't watched that debate. But we will see. Maybe I'll tune in. Right? So the rest of the riffraff, if I'm feeling actually have a chance, in catching up to the first place spot, which of course is the only spot that matters, right? Unless the nominee is going to tap you on the shoulder for VP, right? It's a winner-take-all type situation. I do hope you will subscribe to the podcast because there was more that happened in the debate. As a matter of fact, I said I would provide the headlines, and that is what I did. But there were actual issues and policies discussed during the event. I mean, imagine that. Right? Things that actually relate to your actual life that you live. Oh my goodness, right? As you walk down the street on any given day, or you just think, if I have to fill out this fucking form one more time, I'm gonna punch a hole through this drywall. Or you think, oh geez, grandma's just she's never gonna get an organ. Didn't get the right organ. Guys, I'm talking about real issues that touch your life, your daily routine or your bi-weekly routine. If you happen to check your tax statement, that type of thing. All this stuff was actually discussed, right? And we actually found out what these candidates are officially on record for. Now, that is a different thing than what they would actually do when they're president, right? We have found out time and time again about promises made, promises broken. But at least we're getting promises, right? That's more than we were getting in June, when we were just getting, hey, look at my blue eyes. I want to help the country prosper. Right? I'm sick of these poems and vague, swaths. Yeah. I think I'll wrap it up with swaths. I'm happy with that. So, more detail in a couple of these upcoming podcasts regarding some of the blows exchanged on the debate stage. We did see some rivalry, some insults flung, some feelings hurt maybe, a couple flesh wounds. We also saw what I believe was a lie caught in action, as well as several insults to Hillary Clinton. We saw the candidates insulting each other. We saw the candidates complimenting each other. And finally, we saw more awkwardness out of Megyn Kelly, Bret Baier, and Chris Wallace. This was a big event. We will be hung out to dry here, as the next debate is not until late September. So you can count on those candidates keeping their mouths zipped shut as far as any factual truths, about what effect they might actually have on your life. But they were exposed on August the 6th, and I aim to scrutinize, examine, and present the most glittery and special little facts that we came across on this historic event. And there's quite a bit more comedy hidden in there as well. Leave me a rating on iTunes. That would do me a real solid. You can also hit me up on Twitter at Senior Winslow. I'm on Facebook /Presidential Speculatainment. And of course, you can hit me up at the website to not only see what's going on with the podcasts, the corresponding cartoons that are originally produced, but also some, stories, articles, and some other fun stuff. Most of all, make sure you know where to go to find